welcome to the Dashboard Effect Podcast. I'm Rick Thompson.
I'm Caleb Oakes.
Caleb, we were talking about what we might discuss for today's episode, and you had an interesting topic around how to empower analysts to create reports and make use of data, but also how you deal with the governance around that.
Yeah, right. So, like, just to set the stage, like if you're doing Power BI and you're rolling something out, then people are going to get excited about that, and you're probably going to have people in different departments that maybe they're really good with Excel, or maybe they've done some Power BI before,
right?
And they start building their own things, which is great. Like, you want people to use their data and do that type of thing, but it can cause some problems in terms of like just sprawl of reports, making sure that people are looking at the right numbers, or defining things consistently, that type of thing. And there's some controls you can put in place to handle some of that. But really the topic I want to talk about is if somebody does that and they create something that the rest of the business could benefit from, what do you do?
Yeah. Okay. So I think inherent in what you're talking about is actually freeing the data lets you get a lot more use out of it, right? If you have to sort of funnel through a particular person or even a couple of people for all your reporting, you're missing huge opportunities. So you want to do this, but then when something good is produced, how does it not just get lost in the noise? So,
yeah.
All right. Do you have a theory?
Right. Yeah, I do. First thing I want to cover real quick, and if you've listened to our podcast before, this is going to sound like old news, but one of the first things you want to do is get people that might be doing this access to good data, right? So that's the whole data lake thing. Let's pull our data sources into a single place, and then people like these department analysts, let's call them, can hit the data lake and consume data that way. And ideally, you've got some sort of semantic layer and stuff, but you might actually open it up so they can see raw data too, because they might need something very specific that you haven't necessarily built a nice semantic model for yet, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, let's say that you're at that stage and people have started to build their own reports. Somebody built something that's awesome, and you do want to have the rest of the company use it. There are some simple things, but like that you can just put it into an app and add people to it so they can get it. But I think the things that need to be considered,
BI app.
Yeah, Power BI app, things to be something to consider is that a lot of that knowledge of how that report came together now is sitting with one person, right?
Yeah. That
person may leave. Maybe they get a promotion, they move on, whatever. They win the lottery. Then this thing that just kind of like out here that only really one person knew how to do is kind of unmanaged.
It's orphaned, right? What if you need to make changes? What if you find a mistake in it? How do you deal with that?
Right. So in this case, I mean, I'm kind of going off the top here, like kind of theorizing a little bit, but if you're doing Power BI, you should probably have some sort of central team that's in charge of Power BI, whether that's your IT team or like a data team specifically. So ideally what would happen if somebody creates something like that and it's great, it should go through that team, kind of get cleaned up, make sure best practices are being followed, make sure definitions are correct, make sure you got good written, performing well measures, and the report itself is conforming to a style guide, and then you can roll it out to the rest of the company. Now, at that case, now you've got your knowledge in one with your team that is in charge of this stuff, right? So if somebody leaves or something, at least if that team's doing the right thing, they should be able to keep rolling with that, okay?
That makes sense.
Rather than having it kind of owned somewhere else.
They can make sure that something that's going to be published broadly. You're not talking about like someone did a Power BI report for themselves just to see something, but maybe they did it for themselves, but then they realize, this would be useful other places.
Yeah, right.
So then it goes through a vetting process of some kind just to make sure it's conforming to company standards in terms of how they're doing their measures and so on.
Right.
So how do you, please stop Caleb here, how do you make sure that you're not just putting up that roadblock? So now you're having to go through this funnel again where things are just getting backed up.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that's where you really only want to do that if something is going to be kind of broadcast through the rest of the company. Because I think when I think about it, like if you've got different departments, like, and they know their processes and stuff better than anyone else is going to know them, right?
Right.
So they may need something that's just works really well for them, and you want them to be able to have the power to build that out, right? So there is some risk with that, but I think the benefits far outweigh the risk. So it's better to let people do that.
Yeah.
And then only in the case of if I mean, honestly, if you got backed up, that would be probably a really great thing.
Yeah.
That means that everybody's been doing it, and people are doing a lot of that
Yeah.
own report building, and then
That's
it's
true.
something that's beneficial for the company. So yeah, I mean, I guess you just have to be more strict with it. I think I have seen in some cases where people will think that something's ready for the broader company, but it's really shouldn't go to the broad. The rest,
Right.
everybody else doesn't really care. It's like, no, you just keep that.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
use that yourselves. Or it has something wrong. We've talked about a situation where finance defines revenue differently than sales defines it. And I need to get in sync. I think one of my big takeaways from what you're saying is having a pure self-serve BI environment in your company is a recipe for disaster. There has to be some kind of centralized organizing force, whether you have a partner that's doing that for you or you've got a team that's doing that internally, probably the latter. You need to have that. You need to think about this. So before you just sort of say, hey, everybody go for it, you need to have thought a little bit about how you're going to do that governance. And it doesn't have to be super strict, but there needs to be some levels of quality that you're putting in there.
Right. Yeah.
But man, do you not want to strangle people so they are just like, that's a pain. I'm not going to do it.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a balance. And it's a good summarization. It reminds me of a term right now that's kind of getting some traction called data mesh.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah.
Where it's pretty much that. It's like empower each department or each business unit to do their own thing. I haven't done a ton of research into it. I don't love the idea, and maybe I just haven't gone deep enough on it. But really, I think what we're talking about here, maybe it's the same thing, maybe it's not. But I think what we're talking about is the right way to go about it, like empower people, but to your point, have that central, kind of organizing force.
It occurs to me too, if you have that centralized group, when they see something good, there may be the person might have built a really good semantic model that should just be actually published to everybody, not just the report. But hey, this person organized this in a good way and wrote some measures that we didn't have before. Let's make sure that we get those into, our generalized repository.
Right, exactly. Right, you kind of get a lot more leverage out of your Power BI initiative if you let people go at it like that.
Imagine if we've all come across the spreadsheet, the magic sheet.
Yeah.
It's been used for the last decade that someone created that who knows where they are, who knows how the formula works, and yet a big part of the company is running on it.
Exactly.
And usually in big companies, there's lots of those. You don't want to create that situation with your BI.
Right, exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you.